Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. When we bought the house on Maple Lane, we thought we were escaping the chaos. No HOA, no rules, just peace. But 3 days in, a clipboard-wielding welcome committee knocked. And what followed was a war of wills, flyers, and lawsuits, all because of a pool and a woman named Karen. When my wife and I first stepped onto the porch of the house on Maple Lane, I knew we'd found our place. It wasn't just the wide yard or the big maple out front. It was the feeling. The kind of feeling that whispers, "This is where your kids will grow up. This is where you'll have late dinners on the patio and mow the lawn on lazy Sundays." We bought it within the week. A single-story brick house, freshly renovated inside, with a fenced backyard perfect for the kids. The neighborhood was peaceful, the street clean, and the neighbors seemed friendly enough. At least the ones we saw walking their dogs or jogging past in the evenings. What really sealed the deal, though, was the paperwork. The seller had made it clear this property is not part of any HOA. I remember nodding in relief. I'd dealt with one of those before. Lawn length inspections, fines for the color of your mailbox, neighbor drama disguised as policy. No thanks. This place was free and clear. The title confirmed it, and so did the county records. The original owner had refused to join the newly formed HOA when the community was first developed, and that exemption carried over to me. Freedom never looked so suburban. We moved in at the tail end of summer, boxes everywhere, our kids racing from room to room like puppies let off a leash. That first week was a blur of unpacking, assembling furniture, and introducing ourselves around. The usual stuff. And then, 3 days in, came the knock. It was late morning. I was working in the garage when a pair of impeccably dressed strangers appeared at our door. A man and a woman, polos with logos, clipboards in hand, matching forced smiles. "Good morning. Welcome to the neighborhood," the woman said, extending a hand. "I'm Linda. This is Tom. We're with the Maple Creek Homeowners Association. We just wanted to say hi and invite you to be part of our little community." I shook her hand, already cautious. "Appreciate that, but I believe our property isn't within the HOA." That was one of the reasons we bought this place. Tom chuckled lightly. "Well, technically, you're not in the HOA, but we like to think of everyone in the area as part of the same family." Linda nodded, already pulling out a folder. "It's a simple one-time fee of $5,000 to join, and that gives you access to the community center, events, and, of course, our private pool. After that, it's just $100 a month." I smiled politely, keeping my tone even. "Thanks, but we're not interested. We're happy with things the way they are." The smiles thinned. Tom cleared his throat. Linda gave a tight nod. "Of course. Just know we're always here if you change your mind." They left without incident, but as they walked away, I couldn't shake the feeling I'd just politely declined a secret society. At the time, I chalked it up to awkward neighbor politics. Looking back, it was the first move in a game I didn't even know I was playing. 1 year passed faster than I expected. Life in the new house had settled into a rhythm. Morning coffee on the porch, weekend grilling in the backyard, the kids turning the lawn into their private soccer field. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. We added little things here and there, a hammock, a fire pit, a new mailbox that didn't conform to anyone's standards but ours. No one from the HOA had shown up since that first visit, and I'd assumed the message had been received loud and clear. We weren't part of their community. They left us alone, and we were just fine with that. But summers in our part of the state are brutal. Dry heat, shimmering pavement, and the kind of air that makes you sweat in the shade. After the second week of 90-plus temperatures, my wife half joked, half begged, "I swear, Lucas, if we don't get a pool, I'm moving into a motel for the summer." The kids naturally thought this was the best idea they'd ever heard. So we did it. We hired a reputable contractor, went through all the county permitting, passed inspections, and got everything signed off. I didn't cut corners. I'm not that guy. The pool was modest by resort standards, but for a family of 4, it was paradise. A crystal blue rectangle with a shallow end for the kids, a small cascading fountain feature, soft LED lighting, and even a solar-heated shower off to the side. I landscaped around it, installed a privacy fence, and laid out clean stonework for the patio. Every inch of it was up to code. The kids jumped in for the first time on a Friday. My wife made lemonade. We played music, laughed, and made plans for weekend barbecues. It felt like a reward for everything we'd put into this home. The following Tuesday, I found her standing at the edge of my backyard. I had just finished skimming leaves off the water when I saw the figure in pressed slacks and oversized sunglasses, holding a clipboard like it was a badge. She didn't knock, didn't call, just stood there, inspecting like it was hers. I walked over, towel draped around my shoulders, already annoyed. "Can I help you?" She smiled in that tight, passive-aggressive way I would later come to associate with legal threats. "I'm Karen Harper, president of the Maple Creek Homeowners Association. We need to discuss your recent construction." My brow furrowed. "You mean the pool?" "There's nothing to discuss. Everything was permitted and approved. I'm not part of your HOA." Karen didn't even blink. "The pool does not conform to Maple Creek's water structure standards. Its position, height of surrounding fencing, and lack of board approval make it a violation." I tried not to laugh. "Again, I'm not under your jurisdiction. Your board has no say in what I build on my property." She handed me a folded paper. "This is your official notice of fine. $4,500 for unauthorized aquatic development and $200 for every day it remains out of compliance." I unfolded the page. It had a Maple Creek HOA letterhead, a list of supposed infractions, and what looked like a scanned signature, hers. I met her gaze. "Karen, I think you're mistaken. This land isn't part of your HOA. Check the county maps, check the deed. I've got the documents if you want to see them." She didn't take the bait. "You'll want to resolve this quickly. We prefer not to escalate these matters." She turned and left without another word, walking like someone convinced the entire street belonged to her. I stood there, damp towel still on my shoulders, wondering if that was real. A fine? For my pool? On my land? I hadn't realized it yet, but Karen wasn't just knocking on my door. She was trying to plant her flag in my yard. At first, I assumed Karen's little performance at the fence was a bluff, some overzealous HOA president throwing her weight around, hoping I'd flinch. I didn't flinch. I didn't respond to the fine notice either. I made a few calls, double-checked my paperwork, and confirmed once again that my property was, without a doubt, outside the Maple Creek HOA's jurisdiction. The pool was mine, legal and untouchable. I expected that to be the end of it. It wasn't. The next week, I received a second letter. This one was bolder, printed in red ink, stamped "Final Notice Before Escalation." Karen had doubled down. The letter included a revised fine total of $6,100, factoring in the daily $200 penalties, along with a vague threat about further enforcement mechanisms as allowed by the HOA charter. I tossed it in the drawer with the first one, fully prepared to let my attorney handle it if it kept up. Then came the flyer. It was taped to my mailbox one morning, bright orange with a bold headline that read, "Community Alert, Unauthorized Water Feature at 427 Maple Lane." Beneath it was a photo of my backyard, my pool, my lounge chairs, my daughter's inflatable flamingo, and a paragraph of fear-mongering nonsense warning about potential health and safety risks to nearby children and non-compliance with community visual guidelines. I stood there, stunned, the paper crumpling in my hand. My neighbors walked their dogs. Some glanced at me. A few looked away. The message had been spread, and it was ugly. By the end of the week, more flyers appeared, some posted on street lamps, one stuffed in the handle of my wife's car. They all carried the same tone, dramatic language about reckless water usage, unregulated chemical storage, and my refusal to cooperate with the community board. I felt like I was being cast as the villain in a suburban soap opera. My wife took it harder than I did. She hated conflict, hated attention even more. When she got a phone call from an unfamiliar number, she answered, thinking it was work. It was Karen. She tried to play nice at first, my wife told me afterward. All sugar and concern. "I just wanted to help you both understand how things work here," Karen had said. "We're a tight-knit community. Most people realize it's better to just work with us. Sign the agreement, pay the dues, and we can waive the fines, call it even." My wife, bless her heart, told her no. Calm, polite, but firm. Karen's tone changed instantly. "Are you really willing to go through all this? Do you want your children to grow up in a neighborhood where you're the outcasts? Where no one wants their kids playing next door?" That crossed a line. My wife ended the call, visibly shaken. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stood by the window, looking out at our backyard, bathed in the soft glow of the underwater lights I'd installed. What had started as a harmless pool had turned into a full-blown campaign. This wasn't just harassment. It was targeted social pressure. Karen was weaponizing the neighborhood against us, trying to force us into submission through embarrassment, isolation, and fear. And that's when I knew this wasn't going to stop on its own. I wasn't just going to defend myself. I was going to push back. The next morning, I called my lawyer. Her name was Meredith Sloan, and I'd used her once before during a zoning dispute at my old property. She was sharp, thorough, and not one to be intimidated by a clipboard or a fake smile. When I explained the situation, she didn't laugh, but I could hear the disbelief in her voice. "They fined you for a private pool, on land not within their association?" She paused. "Yeah, okay. I'm going to enjoy this." Within hours, I gathered every document I had: the title deed, closing statements, the property's legal description, the full plot plan with parcel boundaries, and most importantly, a signed and notarized letter from the previous owner explicitly stating that he had never entered into any HOA agreement and that the property had never been subject to one. I even included county GIS maps that outlined the HOA's legal borders. Our parcel wasn't just outside them, it was clearly marked as exempt. Meredith compiled the documents and drafted a formal cease and desist letter. It was beautiful, 4 pages long, written in precise legal language, outlining every instance of harassment, defamation, and abuse of authority by the HOA. She accused them of attempted unlawful enforcement of policies on a non-member, defamation and targeted social harassment through printed materials, invasion of privacy, given the unauthorized photo of my backyard, coercion and intimidation, through community pressure, and potentially tortious interference with the peaceful enjoyment of private property. We sent the letter by certified mail, email, and fax, just to make sure Karen got it with her morning coffee. Meredith also requested a formal written retraction of all fines, a public apology, and immediate cessation of all contact with me or my family. She gave them 5 business days to comply. They responded in 2. Instead of backing off, the Maple Creek HOA doubled down. Their official reply came from a local law firm, a firm that, as Meredith noted, mostly handled landlord-tenant disputes and the occasional estate planning case. The letter was haughty, full of legal fluff and vague citations, but the message was clear. They intended to proceed with enforcement. They believed that due to the property's physical location within the visual boundaries of Maple Creek, the HOA had an interest in maintaining aesthetic and community integrity, and they were now seeking judicial intervention to rectify the oversight of omission. In other words, they were going to court. They actually wanted a judge to forcibly attach my house to the HOA, retroactively. Meredith was livid. "This isn't just nonsense," she told me. "This is them testing how far they can push. If they win here, it sets a precedent. And I'll be damned if I let that happen." She filed a response immediately, a motion to dismiss the suit as frivolous and abusive, along with a request for sanctions on the HOA and their attorney for wasting judicial resources. Attached to it was a thick exhibit of every piece of evidence we'd compiled: the maps, the deed, the ownership history, and a statement from the city zoning board confirming that my property was not, and had never been, part of the Maple Creek development plan. But Meredith didn't stop there. She also contacted the local media. Within a week, a small story ran in the community section of the county paper. Homeowner fights HOA overreach. Property outside association faces fines, pressure. It included a photo of our house, no pool shots this time, and a quote from me about standing up to bullying disguised as bureaucracy. The reaction was immediate. My inbox filled with messages from other homeowners, both within and outside of HOAs, sharing their own horror stories. I got handshakes at the grocery store. One neighbor dropped off a bottle of wine with a Post-it note that said, "Fight the power. Pool's beautiful, by the way." But not all the attention was friendly. Karen, now flanked by the HOA's more loyal board members, started walking the block more frequently. I'd see her slow down in front of my house, her phone out, snapping pictures. A few new flyers appeared again, anonymously distributed. And one evening, I caught a man I didn't recognize parked across the street, camera aimed squarely at my backyard. When I walked toward him, he drove off. They were rattled, but so was I. It was clear now, Karen wasn't acting alone. The HOA had tied their pride to this fight, and they were willing to drag it into court, onto porches, and into the community's gossip mill. But I had the truth, the law, and one hell of an attorney on my side. Let them come. I wasn't just ready for court. I was looking forward to it. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. No towering marble columns, no dramatic skylights, just rows of wooden benches, a few bored-looking clerks, and a judge who looked like he'd rather be golfing. Still, the air felt heavy, like something important was about to go down. Maybe it was just me, dressed in a crisp blue button-down, sitting beside Meredith as we organized our binders, maps, and exhibits. Karen sat across the aisle, surrounded by her hand-picked legal team, two suited lawyers who looked like they were more comfortable handling parking disputes than property law. Karen herself was dressed like she was auditioning for a country club board. White blazer, oversized pearls, the expression of someone convinced that justice already belonged to her. She wouldn't even look at me. Good. I didn't need a stare down. I needed a ruling. The judge called the case. Maple Creek Homeowners Association v. Lucas Draper. The HOA's lawyer launched into a rambling statement about community standards, visual cohesion, and how my property, though technically outside the recorded boundaries, had a long-standing relationship with the values of the Maple Creek development. They even used the phrase spiritual inclusion. I had to bite the inside of my cheek to keep from laughing. Then Meredith stood. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried a sharp, confident tone honed by years of fighting off nonsense just like this. She began with the deed, laying out in plain language the indisputable facts. My property had never been, was not currently, and could not legally be considered part of Maple Creek HOA. She referenced municipal maps, zoning documents, historical filings. She cited statutes on property rights, HOA limitations, and the right to peaceful enjoyment of land. Then she pivoted to the harassment. She held up the flyers, printed them onto large boards. She read snippets from the letters. She showed the photograph Karen's people took of my backyard without consent. This wasn't governance, she said. It was intimidation. It was manipulation. And it was done with full knowledge that the Draper family did not fall under the HOA's jurisdiction. Karen shifted in her seat. Her lawyer whispered something to her, probably realizing this wasn't going as planned. But it got worse. Because next came the county clerk, a neutral third-party witness who confirmed on record that my property was explicitly excluded from the original HOA charter. He even brought the archived signatures showing the original owner's refusal to join. This land was never under HOA governance, he said, flipping through a binder. The association has no claim here. None. The judge sat back, steepling his fingers. I've seen enough, he finally said. And just like that, he dismissed the HOA's complaint with prejudice. Not only did they lose, but they couldn't file again on the same grounds. He also issued a formal warning to the HOA for abuse of process and, this part made Karen's lips twitch, fined the association $25,000 for unlawful harassment and defamation. He looked directly at Karen when he said, "You overstepped, knowingly." This isn't how community leadership is supposed to work. I didn't look at her as we packed up. I didn't need to. The silence on her side of the aisle said everything. I walked out of that courthouse lighter than I'd felt in weeks. For the first time since the pool went in, I could finally breathe. 2 days after the verdict, a certified envelope arrived at my door. Inside was a crisp, embossed letter from the court clerk's office, an official record of the judge's decision. Stamped, signed, and sealed, it spelled out in black and white what I already knew in my bones. My property was entirely, irrevocably, outside the jurisdiction of the Maple Creek Homeowners Association. No fines, no compliance requirements, no forced membership, nothing. It was the legal equivalent of a restraining order against Karen's nonsense, and I held it like a trophy. But the real beauty came with the next document, a directive from the court requiring the HOA to issue a written notice to all Maple Creek residents, clarifying the boundaries of the association and specifically naming my address as being outside their reach. They were also ordered to cease all communication with my family unless initiated by us in writing. Meredith called it a legal muzzle. I called it poetic justice. A few days later, that notice hit mailboxes across the neighborhood. It was worded stiffly, clearly written under duress, but the message was loud and clear. The property located at 427 Maple Lane is not subject to HOA governance. Any previous communication or fine issued by the Maple Creek HOA regarding this address is null and void. It was followed by a vague apology and a promise to review internal procedures. For once, Karen didn't walk the block. I started noticing something funny after that. Neighbors who had once looked away awkwardly when I passed now nodded, smiled, even waved. One man I barely knew crossed the street one morning just to shake my hand. "I've been waiting for someone to stand up to them for years," he said. "Thanks for doing it." Turns out, my fight had struck a nerve. I wasn't the only one they'd leaned on over the years. There were stories about citations for mailbox paint, holiday decorations, even garden gnomes. Karen's reign had gone unchecked because no one wanted to deal with the hassle. But now she was a cautionary tale. I'd occasionally spot her in her front yard, hair still perfect, posture still rigid, but she stopped making eye contact. She stopped knocking on doors, and the HOA board, now publicly embarrassed, had gone quiet too. No more threats, no more leaflets, no more nonsense. But the best part came about a week later when a city zoning official showed up on my doorstep, clipboard in hand, but with a smile on his face. "Just here to deliver this in person," he said, handing me a glossy certificate. "Court-verified zoning exemption, permanent and public." I framed it. It now hangs proudly in my home office, right next to a photo of the pool at sunset. A reminder that not only did we stand our ground, we won. Legally, loudly, permanently. And Maple Creek had no choice but to watch. The evening sun cast a golden shimmer across the surface of the pool, turning the water into a mirror of fire and light. Laughter floated on the breeze, kids splashed, the grill hissed with burgers and skewers, and the sound of classic rock drifted from the speakers I'd mounted on the back porch. It was the kind of scene that felt like the exhale after a long, exhausting breath, the moment where everything just clicked into place. We'd invited the whole block. Not out of spite, not even to gloat, but because after everything that had happened, I wanted to take the narrative back. I didn't want our house to be the one with the lawsuit, or the pool that started a war. I wanted it to be the home where everyone felt welcome, not because they were part of a club, but because they were neighbors. Real ones. To my surprise, most of them showed up, even folks who'd kept their distance before. They came with coolers, fold-out chairs, kids in floaties, and cautiously hopeful smiles. I watched them look around, taking in the yard, the pool, the lights, not with suspicion anymore, but curiosity. And maybe admiration. Someone brought potato salad. Someone else brought a Bluetooth karaoke mic that mercifully broke after 3 songs. People laughed, toasted, played cards at the patio table. My kids chased bubbles and jumped off the edge of the pool in tandem. Even my wife, who had spent weeks tiptoeing through this whole ordeal, looked relaxed again. Barefoot, drink in hand, sunglasses sliding down her nose as she flipped burgers with practiced ease. Then I saw her, Karen, standing just beyond the low hedges, a full 20 feet from the fence line. She wasn't dressed for a party. White blouse, arms folded, posture stiff, watching. No clipboard this time, no board members at her side, just her. A silent, bitter spectator to the very things she tried to crush. I made eye contact just briefly. She didn't flinch, didn't nod, but her mouth tightened, and then she turned, walking back toward her house at a pace just a little too composed. I raised my glass. It wasn't even for her, not really, but it felt good. A small gesture to no one in particular, or maybe to the absurdity of it all, to the months of anxiety, the flyers, the courtroom drama, the calls to my wife, and the lies they'd tried to spin. This moment was the answer to all of it. I clinked glasses with a neighbor who said, grinning, "That's one hell of a victory lap, man." I laughed. Damn right. As the sun finally dipped below the tree line, I flicked on the pool lights. Soft blue and green waves danced across the water. The kids let out a collective "whoa," and everyone leaned back just a little deeper into their chairs. Just behind the grill, I'd posted a new sign, white letters on dark wood, hammered into the grass with thick iron stakes. Private property. Water's clean. No Karens allowed, unless court-ordered. People laughed. Someone took a photo. And just like that, we stopped being the house with the pool drama. We became the house with the best damn party on the block.